Chapter 4. The Ambassador Arrives. Aeliana materialized in the den's arrival chamber via portal, the dimensional transitions smooth and controlled. Her formal robes, the ones that marked her as Ambassador Guardian rather than just a warrior, caught the light as she stepped through. The staff of realms rested against her shoulder, its 7 crystals pulsing faintly with her presence. Her thoughts were already working through the logistics as she walked toward the workshop. Mirkdusk. She needed to go there in person. The other realms could send representatives, but Mirkdusk was still negotiating. Having the Ambassador Guardian arrive directly to coordinate the repatriation of their soldiers, showing that kind of investment, would matter. But more than that, she needed Gunnar with her, not just as her fiancé, as the alpha of the pack, as the symbol of what the Alliance could accomplish. His presence alongside her would carry weight that diplomacy alone couldn't achieve. And then there was what she'd learned this morning about the dire wolves. 5. There were 5 dire wolves now in existence across all the realms. 5. When they were thought extinct. When the old bloodlines had been believed lost forever to time and conflict and the erosion of ancient magics. 3 newborns, born just hours ago to Beta, plus Alpha and Omega. The species wasn't just surviving, it was being restored through the pack itself, through Gunnar's bond with Alpha, through Beta's successful birth. This was the kind of hope the Alliance needed, not just military victories or diplomatic wins, but proof that what was lost could be recovered, that miracles happened. She'd frame it that way to the councils. The prisoner repatriation wasn't just logistics, it was the first proof that the Alliance actually worked, that realms took care of each other's people. And the dire wolves? They were the symbol that the old world could be restored, that the Pack's leadership was bringing something back to life that the realms thought was gone forever. Aeliana pushed through the workshop doors and headed toward the main lab. She could hear voices. Eli's analytical tone, Alatharis's measured responses, Gunnar's occasional low rumble of acknowledgement. She stepped into the lab and stopped. Starbreaker lay completely disassembled across the central bench. Her trained eye catalogued it instantly. Separated components, blueprints covered in fresh sketches, a paused video game on the monitor showing neural interface systems. Gunnar looked up first, his cybernetic eye flickering with that particular intensity that meant he was reading the situation and her simultaneously. Aeliana, he said, and there was warmth underneath the command voice. Wasn't expecting you until tonight. I need to brief you on the prisoner coordination, she said, moving to the workbench. And I need you to come with me to Mirkdusk. In person. She paused, taking in the disassembled rifle. Though I see you're in the middle of something, she observed, her tone carrying the faintest hint of amusement. Should I ask? Eli looked up from the control crystals. Nothing urgent. We can brief you properly after you see what Caleb and Alatharis have been. Later, Aeliana interrupted gently, but her attention was already shifting. Right now, I need to see them. Gunnar understood immediately. He set down the component he'd been holding and stood. Wolf dens below, he said, already moving. They're less than an hour old. Aeliana followed him through the corridors, down the reinforced passages toward the lower levels. The temperature shifted, cooler, more controlled, the air carrying the scent of stone and protective enchantments. They reached the wolf den's entrance, and Gunnar stepped aside. Alpha raised his head from where he lay protective against Beta. The dire wolf's golden eyes tracked Aeliana, but showed no alarm. He knew her, trusted her, had fought beside her. Beta was resting, her massive frame carefully positioned to allow the 3 newborns access to nurse. They were small for dire wolves, that particular fragility that came with newborns, but their forms already carried the unmistakable signature of the bloodline. The power, the presence. Aeliana stepped forward slowly, reverently, as if approaching something sacred. And in a way she was. May I? She asked softly, directing the question to both Gunnar and Alpha. Gunnar nodded once. Alpha's ears remained alert but unthreatened. Aeliana knelt carefully, her formal robes pooling around her. Her hand moved slowly, allowing Beta to scent her, to understand. The Timberwolf's amber eyes tracked the motion, but remained calm. She studied the 3 puppies, 2 males already showing the deeper silver-grey colouring that would mark them as alpha bloodline, 1 female with markings that suggested she'd carry the brightness of her mother's coat. "They're perfect," Aeliana whispered. "They are," Gunnar agreed, settling beside her. "And they need names." Aeliana looked at him, understanding the weight of that request. Names mattered. Names carried significance. These weren't just animals. They were the restoration of an entire species thought extinct. Every choice would matter. 2 males and 1 female, she said, studying each one carefully. "Yes," Gunnar confirmed. Aeliana was quiet for a long moment, her hand still extended toward Beta's side where the puppies nursed. Her mind was working through something larger than just naming. She was thinking about what these wolves represented, the restoration of lost things, the hope that even extinct bloodlines could return, the foundation of something new being built. "The female," Aeliana said finally. "She carries your strength and Beta's brightness. What if we called her Solaris? Sunborn. A reminder that even in the darkest times, light can be restored." Gunnar considered it, then nodded. "Solaris. I like it." "The larger male," Aeliana continued, her finger hovering near the puppy with the deepest silver colouring. "He carries the weight already. I can see it in his posture, the bearing of an alpha's son. What about Sentinel? A guardian, a keeper of the line." "Sentinel," Gunnar repeated. "That works." "And the third," Aeliana said, looking at the smallest male, the one who seemed to be pushing harder than his siblings, more insistent about his claim to his mother's attention. "He's fighting harder, pushing further. He wants more. He's restless." "What about Ember? Fire without the flame, a spark waiting to ignite." Gunnar smiled, that rare, genuine expression that only came when something truly moved him. "Solaris, Sentinel, and Ember," he said quietly. "The first dire wolves born in centuries. Born to a pack that's building something worth protecting." Aeliana looked at him, and in that moment, her role as Ambassador Guardian shifted into something more personal. She was looking at him as his fiancé, as the woman who'd broken her oaths for him, as the person who understood what these 3 puppies meant to both their futures. "They're a sign," she said softly, "to the councils, to Atherin, Mirkdusk, Concordia, that the alliance isn't just political, it's restoring things that were lost, rebuilding what the realms thought was gone forever." Gunnar turned to face her fully. "Come to Mirkdusk with me," she continued. "Show them what the pack has already restored. Not just prisoners being returned, but hope. Actual, tangible hope that the old magics, the old bloodlines, can survive, can thrive." She paused. "I need you there. Not as a subordinate, as my partner, as the man who's building this future alongside me." Gunnar reached out and took her hand, his prosthetic fingers careful against hers. "When do we leave?" he asked. Aeliana glanced at the newborns, too young to travel, too fragile for dimensional transit, but her gaze moved to Alpha, still watchful, still protective. "The puppies are too young," she said. "But Alpha comes with us," Gunnar finished, understanding immediately. "Not just as my wolf, as the symbol, living proof that the dire wolves aren't extinct, that they're here, that they're thriving." Alpha's ears perked at the mention of his name. He looked from Gunnar to Aeliana, sensing the shift in purpose. "Exactly," Aeliana said. "One look at Alpha and they'll understand. Not just words about restoration. They'll see it. A dire wolf walking beside the pack's commander and the Ambassador Guardian. That's a message no council can ignore." She stood, her hand still in his. "We leave at first light. You, me, and Alpha. We show them what the Alliance looks like when it actually works. Gunnar stood beside her, Alpha rising as well, the dire wolf moving to stand at his side with the practiced ease of a bonded pair. Then we bring them home, Gunnar said. The prisoners, the soldiers, Mirkdusk's people restored to Mirkdusk, and they see the dire wolves again, walking free. That's the future we're building. Aeliana smiled, that rare, genuine expression that only came when the diplomat and the woman in love aligned. Yes, she said, that's exactly what we're building. Alpha pressed against Gunnar's leg, ready, patient, waiting for his commander's next order. In the wolf den below them, Beta settled protectively around her 3 newborns, Solaris, Sentinel, and Ember. The future of a species reborn. Chapter 5. A Visit in the Night. Lucient preferred the quiet hours before dawn, when Concordia's noise thinned and the city's bones could be heard. His chamber beneath the House of Night Whispers was lit by a soft ring of blue-white runes, just enough illumination to outline the curve of the mirrors that lined the walls. Half of them were veiled. The rest showed nothing at all. A table of dark stone stood at the centre, cluttered with ledgers, fine ink brushes, and a map of 5 realms marked only with coloured threads. It was not a throne room. It was a ledger made manifest. He was reading when the Whisperer arrived. Soft steps. A brief pause at the threshold. One knuckle tapped the wood twice in the pattern that meant, this is not routine. Enter, Lucient said. The door opened just wide enough for the messenger to slip through. A slender man in muted grey, hood lowered, eyes shadowed more by training than fatigue. He held a slate of etched crystal and parchment rolled beneath one arm. My lord, the Whisperer said. Traffic reports from the outer webs, Concordia, Atherin, Mirkdusk, Umbral, Earth. Lucient's fingers rested on the page he'd been reading. And? The pattern has shifted. That earned the man Lucient's full attention. He held out his hand. The Whisperer stepped forward, placing the crystal in his palm. It hummed with soft, stored resonance, the faint echoes of reports layered over each other. Lucient brushed 2 fingers along the edge. Threads unfurled across the map on the table, lines of faint light jumping from Concordia to Umbral, out to Mirkdusk and Atherin, flickering down into Earth's anchor points. Except now, they were retracting. Routes that had once carried contraband, message couriers, cult priests, and Black Dawn operatives were going dark, one after another. Not scattered, not severed. Retracted. Interesting, Lucient murmured. The Whisperer waited. Lucient adjusted the crystal's focus. The glowing threads converged, tightening into a cluster somewhere beyond the known network. A point off the edges of his mapped anchors. Not Alfheim. Not Umbral. Not any realm Concordia had historically traded with. A place his net did not yet name. Evacuation? He asked. Not a rout, the Whisperer said quietly. They're not fleeing in panic. It's organised, staggered withdrawals, diversionary movements to mask patterns, but once decrypted, all pull inward. All what? Black Dawn cells, the Whisperer said. Every significant remnant still active in the 5 Alliance realms. Hyperion fragments in Mirkdusk. The cult enclaves in Atherin. What was left after Draven's fall here? Even the Earthside sympathizers. Lucient studied the convergence point, the way the lines vibrated slightly as if carrying a low hum. So, he said, our problem children are going home. To somewhere, the Whisperer said. None of our contacts can place the realm they're gathering in. It doesn't match existing recorded anchors. Lucient smiled faintly, a curve of the mouth without warmth. Someone found an empty room in the house and decided to lock the door behind them. The Whisperer hesitated. There is more. The names being spoken have changed. Lucient made a small circling motion with his fingers. They no longer swear by Draven or the Council, the Whisperer continued. the low-level remnants refer to the mother, the phantom reborn, the king's bride, in scattered phrases. When pressed, they say only, "She speaks. We obey." "One voice," Lucient said softly. "Yes," the Whisperer confirmed. "A single command structure now. All allegiance has consolidated upward. Whatever Black Dawn is now, it answers to her." Lucient watched the last of the glowing threads slip off his map, vanishing into the uncharted space beyond. "And the trader?" he asked. The Whisperer swallowed. "No one has seen him. No verified sightings. No whispered deals. His usual channels are silent." Lucient's eyes narrowed, the first hint of real disturbance crossing his face. "That," he said, "is unnatural." He let the crystal darken, the threads fading until the map once more showed only ink and pinned markers. "Have the outer webs double-check," he said. "If the trader has finally run out of lives, I prefer confirmation. If he hasn't, then he is hiding from something he fears more than death." "Yes, my lord." Lucient set the crystal aside. "Prepare my escort," he said. "A small one. No spectacle." The Whisperer blinked. In all his years in service, he could count on one hand the number of times Lucient had left the house without sending others in his place. "Destination?" he asked. Lucient reached for his coat, the dark fabric catching no light as he slung it over one shoulder. "The House of Silver Mirrors," he said. "Rose has paid her debts. And Alpha Phelan has kept her word. I will not have it said that Lucient of Night Whispers hoards knowledge when the board shifts this dramatically." He paused at the threshold, fingers resting briefly on the frame. "Besides," he added almost amused, "I find myself curious how Concordia looks when the wolves and the knives are both in residence." The corridors of Concordia were quieter now than when war had first gnawed at its bones. The city was still scarred, but under Rose's command it was no longer bleeding. That was one of the reasons Lucient preferred to walk. His small escort kept to the shadows behind him. They were not for show. There were simply places in Concordia where even his name did not guarantee safety. Not anymore. Too many factions had learned that monsters bled like anyone else. The House of Silver Mirrors rose at the end of the narrow street, its facade rebuilt, the fractured glasswork repaired into something sharper than before. Lanterns burned in recessed alcoves, their light cutting strange angles across the arched doorway. Lucient reached for the handle. The inner ward recognized him before the door did. Rings of faint magic brushed against his skin, tasting for intent, for lies, for violence. He allowed them their moment. A second later, the barrier relaxed. The door opened. He stepped inside. The air in the entrance hall was cooler, carrying the faint scent of polished wood, tapestries, and steel. And he was not alone. Two figures were crossing the hall toward the rear portal, the kind that hummed with recent and repeated use. Both wore gear suited for travel and combat, not court. Katrina in fitted armor with her cloak thrown back, shade in darker leathers that absorbed light rather than reflected it. Lucient had never met them in person. He didn't need to. Some people carried their stories like a banner. The woman's posture, the set of her shoulders, the weight of unseen grief and steel around her. This was not a mere operative. This was rulership broken and reforged into something leaner, harder. The man beside her moved with an almost lazy grace that never truly let its guard down, every step a calculation. Shadowborn. The kind who knew how long it took a man to die if cut in the right place. Lucient slowed his pace just enough to give the moment room to breathe. Katrina's gaze flicked toward him as they drew level. For the briefest instant, their eyes met. Recognition passed between them without titles. Not of faces, but of kind. Lucient inclined his head, just enough to acknowledge a queen without kneeling. "Your Majesty," he said lightly. Her chin lifted a fraction. "Not anymore." "Oh," Lucient replied. "I think you'll find some crowns don't come off." Shade's eyes tracked him without expression, measuring distance, exits, angles. He gave no verbal greeting, just a short, almost imperceptible nod. "A queen," Lucient murmured, more to himself than to them. "And her shadow." Katrina's mouth quirked. Something that might have been humour might have been threat. She didn't stop walking. Neither did Shade. They passed him by and headed for the portal chamber, the air behind them disturbed but not unsettled. They had somewhere to be, and it was not here. Lucient watched them go for 2 heartbeats, then turned his attention forward. The wolves and knives were indeed in residence. Time to see how sharp they'd become. The central chamber of the House of Silver Mirrors had changed since the last time Lucient had crossed its threshold. Less ornament, more purpose. Rose stood near the main table, a spread of maps and reports laid out before her. Lyra leaned against a nearby column with the kind of relaxed posture that fooled only the inattentive. Clara and Omega were positioned just off-centre, Clara's stance easy but ready. Omega's massive frame curled on the floor at her side, gold eyes half-lidded in the way of predators that never truly slept. Darren lounged near the far wall, Thunderstrike resting across his shoulders, expression carefully neutral and failing spectacularly at it. Lady Vess watched from a seat near one of the mirrored walls, hands folded, rings glinting, gaze sharp despite everything she'd lost. Conversation trailed off when Lucient stepped through the inner doors. Omega's head came up first. The wolf's hackles rose a centimetre, not a threat, not yet, but a warning that his presence had been noted, measured, and filed. Clara's hand dropped, fingers brushing the thick fur at Omega's neck. A subtle gesture, a leash made of trust rather than force. "Lucient," Rose said, her tone even. "I was wondering how long it would take you." "Any longer, and it would have been impolite," he replied, offering her a small, precise bow. "You rebuilt quickly." "We had motivation," she said, "and help." His gaze flicked to Clara. "Alpha Phelan," Lucient said. "I see Concordia hasn't dulled you." Clara's mouth twitched. "Some of us work for a living." Darren opened his mouth. "Careful," he began. "The Crips must really be missing their—" "Darren." Rose didn't raise her voice. Clara didn't even look at him. "No." He shut his mouth with a quiet click. Lucient's eyes glinted with amusement. "Still a sharp tongue, Darren. I trust you've been pointing it at the right enemies." "Depends who walks through the door," Darren muttered. Lyra pushed off the column, crossing her arms. "To what do we owe this visit, Lucient? Decided to see daylight before it gets unfashionable?" "If daylight ever goes out of fashion, my dear," Lucient said smoothly, "this city will have larger problems than my social schedule." He stepped fully into the room, his eyes taking them all in, weighing, measuring, cataloguing. "I came," he said, voice shifting into something flatter, "because I dislike owing debts, and because I dislike blind spots even more." Rose's attention sharpened. "What changed?" "Black Dawn," Lucient said. "Whatever is left of it." That got everyone's focus. Clara straightened. Omega's growl deepened a shade. Lyra's flippancy edged into something more restrained. Vess went very still. Lucient reached into his coat and drew out a slim strip of etched crystal and folded parchment bound with black thread. He set both on the table. "My webs across the 5 realms have been tracking their remnants," he said. "Concordia, Mirkdusk, Atherin, Umbral, Earth." "We've hit them hard in all 5, Clara said. "Ashley's teams, Echo, yours, Rose in Concordia. They've been bleeding." "They have," Lucient agreed, "which is why, when rats begin leaving a house you've already set on fire, you usually assume they are finally dying." "Usually," Rose said. Lucient tapped the crystal. Runes flared softly, tracing routes across the map laid out between them, faint ghost lines that stretched between realms. Then, one by one, they began retracting. Lines that had connected Mirkdusk's undercity to Umbral. Weak points faded. The thin, dangerous paths between Concordia's forgotten alleys and Earthside cult cells dimmed. Supply routes in Atherin winked out, not at random, all of them pulling inward, converging off the marked edge of the map. "This is an organized retreat," Lucient said. "Someone has called every surviving Black Dawn cell home." "Home where?" Lyra asked. Lucient's gaze flicked to the blank space at the edge of the map. "If I knew," he said, "I would be charging more for this conversation." Rose frowned. "You're sure it's not Umbral?" "Umbral is broken and watched," Lucient said. "Besides, they are too careful. These withdrawals are masked, layered, dressed in false trails. But once stripped down, they do not lead to any anchor I recognize. This is either a dead realm reawakened or a place Black Dawn has kept off every ledger the rest of us use." "So they're not just retreating," Clara said. "They're consolidating." "Yes," Lucient's expression smoothed. "For the first time since Draven's fall, what remains of them is being pulled into a single grip." Clara's fingers tightened in Omega's fur. "Who's doing the pulling?" Lucien let the parchment fall open. Whispered fragments were inked there, each line attributed to a different contact, a different realm, a different tongue. "The Phantom speaks now. There is only one voice. The Mother of Shadows calls us home. She bears the King's mark. Disobedience is death." "No single proper name," Lucien said. "No formal title, just fear, just obedience. Just certainty that, wherever they go, they are going where she wants them." Rose's jaw set. "So someone has taken control." "Yes," Lucient said, "and that someone is not Draven, not Ravina. Certainly not the dithering human puppets they once used." "And the trader?" Darren asked, eyes narrowed. "That slippery bastard always finds a way to show up when there's profit." Lucient's amusement faded entirely. "That," he said quietly, "is the part I find most unsettling. I have no trace of him, no sightings, no overheard bargains, no bodies with his handiwork on them." "He could be dead," Clara said. Lucient shook his head once. "The trader doesn't die quietly. If someone finally killed him, he'd make sure the world knew whose knife was in his back. And if he isn't dead, then he's hiding," Lyra finished. "From her." Lucient inclined his head. Rose watched the map, the blank space where all those threads had vanished. "So Black Dawn is leaving the Alliance realms and gathering in one place, under one leader, and we don't know where that place is." "Not yet," Lucient said. "My nets are already straining in that direction. But until I can name the room they've chosen to lock themselves in, all I can tell you is this. You have breathing space. And a storm building somewhere you cannot yet see." Omega's growl became a low, continuous rumble. Clara soothed him with a touch, gaze never leaving the map. "You came in person to give us this," Rose said. "Yes." Lucient met her eyes. "Alpha Phelan kept her promise about Umbral. My debts are few, and I do not like them lingering. Consider this one paid." Rose's mouth curved, sharp as broken glass. "If this is you settling a debt, I look forward to the day you're the one asking for a favour." "Perish the thought," Lucien said dryly. He glanced once more at the crystal, then at the faces around the table. "Find your missing queen and her shadow," he added. "If Black Dawn is pulling back from Mirkdusk, that front will be more exposed than you think. The Alliance will need sharp eyes there, and Ashley will need people she trusts." Clara nodded. "They're already on their way." Lucient smiled faintly. "Then, for once, I am not behind." He turned to go. "Lucient," Rose said. He paused. "If you do learn where they've gone," she said, "you'll tell me." "Of course," he replied. "You'll be the first to know." She held his gaze. He didn't blink. Then he chuckled under his breath. "Or perhaps the second. After I decide whether the price of knowing is worth the trouble it will bring." And with that he stepped out of the chamber, his escort falling in behind him, leaving the House of Silver Mirrors quieter than before. The threads on the map had vanished, but no one in the room believed they had stopped moving. Lucient's footfalls faded down the polished hallway, swallowed by the mirrors and stone. The chamber seemed to exhale once he was gone, tension loosening but not disappearing. Omega was the first to move. The dire wolf's rumble deepened into something almost restless. He pushed to his feet, thick shoulders rolling as he paced a tight circle around Clara, tail stiff, ears swiveling hard toward the exit Lucient had taken. Clara's hand brushed Omega's side, steadying him without looking away from the map. "He's right," she said quietly. "This isn't a rumor. This is a shift." Darren let out a breath that was half laugh, half disbelief. A whole damn retreat across 5 realms? All because some psycho witch pulled Black Dawn back like dogs on a leash? "Yeah, that's a shift." Lyra arched a brow. "You sound jealous. Wish you could bark orders that effectively, Darren." "Please," Darren muttered. "I scare people the old-fashioned way." Clara's gaze snapped to him, sharp, alpha steady. "That's enough." Darren lifted a hand in surrender. "Just saying words, boss." Rose didn't look up from the crystal Lucient had left. Her fingers hovered above its surface, reading the faint hum of residual signatures in the way only someone trained in secrets could. "This changes Aeliana's mission," she said. "And Gunner's. They're walking into Mirkdusk with half the information." Lyra stepped closer. "More like a quarter." Clara turned fully now, Omega mirroring her movement, golden eyes locked on hers. "He needs to know," Clara said. "Both of them do." Rose exhaled once, controlled, steady. "Agreed." Clara looked to Darren. "Gear up. We're going." Darren grinned, the kind of grin that came right before trouble. "Finally." Omega chuffed, bumping Clara's hip with his head. Impatient, eager. There was no hesitation in him. He wanted to run. "Just don't storm the place," Rose said. "Aeliana's working diplomacy, not warfare." Clara nodded. "We're not going to disrupt her meeting. We're going to inform Gunner before it becomes something worse." Lyra crossed her arms. "Should I tell Vess she'll be without her favourite wolves for a while?" Vess shot her a wide-eyed glare. Lyra winked. Rose looked up now, the crystal dimming in her hand. "You two," she said to Clara and Darren. "Move fast. But don't arrive like a strike team. Ashley's in command at Mirkdusk, and she's smart enough to shoot first if she thinks someone's breaching her perimeter." Darren slung Thunderstrike across his back. "She ever shoot at me, I'm telling Eli." "Do that," Lyra said dryly. "We've never had a funeral with fireworks." Omega growled, not at the joke, but because he wanted movement, wanted action, wanted to get back to his alpha's side. Clara rested a hand on his neck, grounding him again. "We're leaving," she told him softly. The wolf stilled instantly. Then Clara looked to Rose, voice taking on that steadiness that made Lucient call her Alpha Phelan with respect. "We'll bring it to them before they step into anything they can't step out of." Rose gave a short nod. "The portal's primed. Take the stabilized mirror path. Ashley reinforced the anchor at Mirkdusk 2 hours ago." Clara's gaze flicked to Lyra. "Tell Shade and Katrina we'll reconnect once they reboot Mirkdusk's perimeter." Lyra smirked. "On it." Darren clapped his hands once. "All right, wolves. Let's go ruin someone's morning." Omega's growl this time had edge. Agreement, not warning. Clara stepped toward the corridor, confidence and urgency in the stride of a woman who could navigate a dozen realms without losing her purpose. "Darren," she called over her shoulder. He jogged up beside her. "Yeah? Do not antagonize Ashley." He looked personally offended. "Why does everyone keep saying that?" Lyra's voice floated after them. "Experience, darling." Rose watched as Clara and Darren disappeared into the mirror corridor, Omega padding like a silent shadow at their heels. She glanced once more at the dimmed crystal in her hand. "Storm's coming," she murmured. Lyra tilted her head. "Think they'll reach Gunner before it hits?" Rose's eyes hardened. "They'd better." Chapter 6. Return to the Broken City. Beta lay curled protectively around her 3 newborns, Solaris, Sentinel, and Ember. Their tiny paws kneaded against her side, tails flicking in slow rhythm as they nursed under warm enchantment stones. The air smelled faintly of earth and fur and ancient magic, the kind that ran deeper than any realm's politics. Aeliana knelt beside them, brushing Beta's head with reverent fingers. "You did well," she whispered. "They're strong." Beta lifted her head, amber eyes soft but wary, protective even in exhaustion. Gunnar stood behind Aeliana, gear bag slung over one shoulder, his cybernetic fingers tapping lightly against the metal strap. Not impatience, just the commander in him running checklists in the background of everything he did. Alpha rose as Aeliana stood, the massive dire wolf shaking out his coat. His claws clicked once against stone before he settled at Gunnar's side, golden eyes bright and alert. The air around him carried the subtle weight of an apex predator who had willingly chosen a pack. "You ready?" Gunnar asked quietly. Aeliana gave Beta one last nod, then turned. "Let's go." They stepped out of the den, the heavy stone door sealing behind them. Pack den, upper corridor. They'd barely made it 50 feet before Gunnar tapped his comm. "Dezera, Alpha here." Static cleared. Dezera's voice came through, crisp and controlled. "Go ahead." "Aeliana and I are departing for Mirkdusk," Gunnar said. "Estimated absence, 6 hours minimum. You're acting commander until we return." "Understood," Dezera replied immediately. "Earthside operations stable. No unusual activity in the perimeter nets." "Keep them tight, and keep the workshop running," Gunnar said. "Alatharis and Eli were in the middle of something." "Already monitoring," Dezera confirmed. "Anything else, Alpha?" Aeliana stepped slightly closer. "Dezera, if Eli identifies any fluctuation in the ley line anchors, I want to know ASAP." "Yes, Ambassador Guardian. Safe travels." Gunnar ended the call, clipped the comm back to his belt, and exhaled through his nose. "All right," he murmured. "Now we go." Alpha chuffed, nudging Gunnar's hip as if to say he'd been ready the entire time. Aeliana smiled faintly. "Let's not keep Ashley waiting." Secure portal chamber. The guards at the reinforced door straightened the moment they approached. "Alpha! Ambassador!" The steel doors unlocked with a series of deep clanks, revealing the portal chamber, a ring of etched runes glowing faintly blue, containment fields layered like transparent glass, and a humming core of stabilized ley line energy. This gate had been calibrated to Mirkdusk during the realm stabilization 2 months earlier. The anchor was solid, reliable, safe. Aeliana stepped to the console. A transparent panel flared to life. Ambassador Guardian detected. Clearance verified. Gunnar placed his palm on the secondary pad. "Alpha, pack command recognized. Access granted." Alpha padded forward, the system scanning him automatically. "Enhanced entity. Pack protocol. 1. Authorized." "What did Eli always say?" Aeliana murmured. "Proper documentation matters." Gunnar snorted. "She says that right before ignoring half of it." Aeliana gave him a sidelong look. "Sounds familiar." He opened his mouth to argue, but stopped when the portal flared open, swirling silver-blue light brightening the chamber. Aeliana tightened her robes and adjusted the staff of realms across her back. Gunnar shifted his gear bag, rolled his shoulders once, then looked at her. "You ready?" he asked. "I was born for this," she said softly. He nodded once. Then he stepped into the portal. A breath of cold air swept the chamber as Gunnar vanished into the light. Aeliana followed, posture regal and steady, the portal glow wrapping around her like a second skin. Alpha came last, launching himself through the gateway with a predatory, effortless leap. The portal flickered, dimmed, and closed. Mirkdusk arrival chamber. Cold air hit them instantly, thin, sharp, touched by stone dust and the faint magenta glow of the fractured ley line deep beneath the city. They emerged into Mirkdusk's rebuilt arrival chamber, massive stone walls reinforced with metal ribs and shimmering wards. Cracks along the ceiling pulsed faintly with the city's lifeblood, the same glow Argos had grown up beneath. A squad of guards stiffened as they appeared, hands twitching toward weapons before they recognized the markings on the portal. Gunnar stood tall, scanning the exits first, then the guard posture, then the runes etched into the walls. Aeliana stepped out behind him, her presence shifting the room without effort. Then Alpha emerged. The entire chamber froze. Guards recoiled. Some stepped back. One nearly tripped over his own boots, not because they feared the wolf, but because they knew the stories. Gunnar glanced sideways, saw it, understood it. Aeliana leaned slightly toward him. "They've heard the rumors," she murmured. "Black Dawn propaganda," he said quietly. "They think we eat people." Alpha huffed, unimpressed. They moved deeper into the structure, guided by a lieutenant who looked like she might faint. As they entered the transit hall, the corridor opened into a wide, stone-lined passage where several POW trustees swept debris from the floor. They saw Gunnar first. Everything stopped. One man recoiled violently, hitting the wall with a grunt. A woman dropped her broom. Another prisoner dropped to his knees, trembling. Someone whispered, "Wolf, please." Aeliana stepped forward immediately, her voice soft but unwavering. "You are not prisoners anymore," she said. "You will be returned home. You will see your families." Alpha stayed behind Gunnar, posture lowered, but massive enough to fill the hall with presence. Gunnar crouched beside the nearest prisoner, who had sunk to the floor. "Stand up," he said quietly. Not a threat, not an order, a request. The prisoner hesitated, then reached out. Gunnar helped him to his feet. Aeliana watched fear crack into something else. Respect, maybe. Understanding. Hope. "About damn time." Ashley's voice echoed down the corridor. She stepped around the corner, 240B slung across her back, sleeves rolled up, eyes sharp as always. She stopped dead when she saw Alpha. "Oh," she said flatly. "So we're doing this today." Alpha tilted his head. Ashley tilted hers. Gunnar exhaled. "Ashley." "Alpha," she smirked. "Ambassador. Wolf?" Alpha chuffed. "Ashley," Aeliana said, suppressing a smile. "Are the prisoners ready?" They're lined up, verified, sanitized, and scared out of their minds. Ashley shrugged. Apparently someone told them the pack was coming to eat them. Gunnar pinched the bridge of his nose. "Great." Aeliana rested her hand lightly against his arm. "This is the future we're building," she said. "One step at a time." Ashley jerked her thumb down the hall. "Come on, let's go convince them you're not here for dinner." Gunnar, Aeliana, and Alpha followed. Behind them, the city of Mirkdusk hummed with old wounds and new hope. Ahead of them, Clara, Darren, and Omega had no idea their news would hit like a hammer the moment they arrived. But that would come later. Right now, this was diplomacy, and the pack walked forward into it. Ashley led the way through a reinforced doorway into the lower transit hall. The air changed immediately, thicker, touched with coal dust, ley line static, and the metallic tang that Mirkdusk's stone always carried. The hall opened into a large atrium where dozens of workers moved in organized chaos. Some human engineers from the 5077th, some elves in silver-trimmed armor consulting rune maps, and others who were unmistakably Mirkdusk locals with rough-cut clothes, tools over shoulders, and expressions carved from hard living. A few paused when they saw Gunnar. More paused when they saw Alpha. But when they saw Aeliana, the entire room shifted. Elven guards straightened, engineers stepped aside, locals stared. Ashley didn't slow. "Ambassador wants the full picture," she called out. "Make a hole." The crowd parted. Aeliana moved through it like she'd been born to these moments. Calm, composed, the staff of realms resting against her back without drawing attention. She studied everything. The reconstruction scaffolds, the cracked ceiling runes, the magenta ley line glow bleeding through fractures in the floor. "This reconstruction is progressing faster than expected," she said. Ashley nodded. "The elves and the 5077th work well together. Turns out magical stone responds real nice to someone with a sledgehammer and an attitude problem." One of the combat engineers overheard and laughed. Ma'am, with all due respect, we call that professional enthusiasm. Aeliana smiled. And it shows. They listen to us, Ashley said, lowering her voice. Locals, too. Hish's people are cooperative. They don't trust anyone yet, but they trust results. Where is Hish? Aeliana asked. In his office, Ashley said. Trade Guild leadership is waiting for you. And the repatriation site? 2 levels down, Ashley said. We've segregated the POWs from the local population to reduce panic. Gunnar nodded. Smart. Ashley gave him a flat look. Yeah, well, after what you did in Draven's courtyard, the story's got exaggerated. Alpha huffed. Gunnar didn't comment. Aeliana stepped between them before Ashley continued. We're here to win hearts and minds, Aeliana said. Not reopen wounds? Ashley exhaled, nodded, and pushed on. The holding atrium. They descended into a wider chamber lit by low burning purple runes. The Trade Guild banners hung along the walls, patched but present. A few elven guards stood watch near the secured doors. A knot of nervous Mirkdusk civilians waited in the back. Family members, guild clerks, people who came for news of the prisoners. They whispered when they saw the trio approaching. One whispered too loudly, "That's the wolf!" Another murmured, "That's the guardian. Gods help us. It's really her." Aeliana paused for just a breath, letting the weight of the gaze settle. Then she lifted her chin and stepped forward. The room quieted. Ashley gestured to the secured door. Hish is waiting inside. He's nervous as hell. Not because of you, Ambassador, because you're the first person with real authority to walk into Mirkdusk since Draven died. Aeliana nodded. Then we give him something better than fear. Gunnar scanned the room again. Where's the first group of prisoners? On standby, Ashley said. We'll bring them out once the Trade Guild signs off. Gunnar grunted. Good. As they approached the Trade Guild chamber, Aeliana felt a pulse ripple through the ley line fractures. An echo of something old and deep, a reminder of the realm's wounds. She rested her hand briefly on Gunnar's arm. We can do this, she said softly. Gunnar nodded once. Let's get it done. Alpha pressed close, ready. Ashley opened the fortified door. Inside, the Trade Guild leaders waited, and with them, the future of Mirkdusk. The fortified door swung open, revealing the Trade Guild chamber. A room of carved stone older than most of Mirkdusk's inhabited districts. The walls bore the realm's ancient seals, hammer or spiral ledger mark, and bonded contract sigils. Light from the ley line fractures shimmered faintly through cracks in the far wall, giving the room a violet glow. Hish stood at the centre, leader of the Trade Guild, interim stabilizer of Mirkdusk, a man who had survived Draven's rule by being useful and too stubborn to break. 2 lieutenants flanked him. 2 elven guards positioned themselves at the back, alert but non-threatening. Hish bowed deeply. Ambassador, Alpha, Mirkdusk welcomes you. Aeliana returned the bow with flawless diplomatic grace. Your realm has endured more than any should. We're here to help restore stability. And trust. Gunnar nodded. We're here to bring your people home. The ledger keeper stepped forward, voice careful. That is what we hope, Commander. But we require clarity on terms. Aeliana stepped closer to the long table. Maps lay spread across it. Mining tunnels, trade routes, fortified choke points and reconstruction areas where the 5,077th and Elven Guards worked side by side. A list of POW names rested at the centre. We intend to return your citizens without condition, Aeliana said. Their future belongs to Mirkdusk, not Alfheim or Earth. The woman hesitated. And yet, assistance often carries unseen obligations. Aeliana's expression softened, not offended but deeply aware of Mirkdusk's trauma. I understand your fear. Draven manipulated every offer of help, but we are not here to replace him, or any ruler. We are here to support your people as you rebuild. Hish exhaled, tension still in his shoulders. We want written assurances, guarantees the Alliance won't absorb Mirkdusk under its banner. An alliance is an agreement, Aeliana replied, not an annexation. Still. The air tightened. The lieutenants exchanged looks. The elven guards stiffened. The impasse was forming. Before Aeliana could recalibrate her approach, the chamber door slid open. Clara slipped inside first, Omega at her side, her clothes marked by travel dust. Her expression was controlled, but her eyes locked instantly onto Gunnar with urgency. Darren followed, stepping lightly but alert, thunderstrikes secured across his back. Aeliana's surprise flickered across her face. Gunnar's expression tightened. Clara approached him quietly and bowed her head. "Alpha," she whispered, "I need to brief you. Immediately." Gunnar glanced at Aeliana. She nodded once. "Go." He turned. "Darren." Darren straightened. "You stay. Step in if needed." He looked to Alpha. "Stay with Aeliana." Alpha pressed against Aeliana's leg, massive and unmoving. Gunnar and Clara slipped out of the room, Omega guarding the door. The chamber fell silent. Darren stood near Aeliana's right side, just close enough to back her, but not enough to overshadow her role. He kept his hands relaxed at his sides, his gaze passing over the maps, the guild representatives, the tension between their shoulders. He said nothing. He was listening. Aeliana resumed the meeting. "Your concerns are valid," she told the guild. "Your autonomy matters. We seek partnership, not control. The Alliance cannot succeed unless each realm remains free to govern itself." The ledger woman stepped forward, voice tight. "Then why bring a dire wolf into our halls? Why send the wolf of Earth to preside over our prisoners?" A wave of apprehension swept the room at the word wolf. Aeliana held her ground. Because symbols matter. Because trust is built with strength and compassion, not fear. And because Gunnar is the alpha responsible for the prisoners' welfare. Their return is his responsibility. "But how do we know," Hish said slowly, "that you won't return next month with new rules, new demands, new authority?" Aeliana opened her mouth, but Darren saw it. The hesitation, not because she didn't have an answer, but because she couldn't give them one without Gunnar present. He leaned in slightly, keeping his voice low. "Aeliana," he murmured, "may I?" She glanced at him. Eyes searching his face, she saw certainty, steady confidence, that strange, uncanny ability he had to read a room and bring people together. She gave a single subtle nod. Darren stepped forward. Not aggressively, not like a soldier, like a man who knew exactly how fragile the air was. "Let me put this in plain terms," he said. His voice was calm, steady, grounded. Hish's eyes narrowed. "You speak for the commander?" "No," Darren said, shaking his head. "I speak for myself, for what I've seen across 5 realms, for what I've lived." He paced slowly along the table's edge, hands loosely folded behind his back. "You're afraid we're here to take Mirkdusk, to claim it. That's understandable. Draven took everything. He built a kingdom of ashes and fear." The ledger woman swallowed. Darren continued. "But we don't want your realm. We've got our hands full with our own. Earth's a mess. Alfheim's political. Concordia is rebuilding from the ground up. And trust me, Gunnar doesn't want to manage another realm. He barely tolerates the meetings he's already in." A faint ripple of laughter moved through the room. Aeliana hid a small smile behind her hand. Darren pointed gently at the map. "You want autonomy. Good. Keep it. What we're offering isn't control. It's foundation work. You rebuild your way. With our help, not our authority." The human lieutenant crossed his arms. "What about the prisoners? You bring them back. And then what?" "They're yours," Darren said simply. "Your families, your fighters, your future workforce, your responsibility. We're giving them back because they belong here." Hish studied him. And this will be guaranteed? In writing? Aeliana stepped forward again. Yes, she said, you will have written assurances drafted today, reviewed by your guild, and signed by both myself and Alpha Gunner. Your sovereignty will be protected. The tension in the room softened, just a fraction, but enough. Aeliana's eyes drifted toward Darren. Respect in her expression she didn't bother to hide. He gave her the smallest shrug, like it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was exactly what the meeting needed. Exactly when it needed it. The door opened again. Gunnar stepped back inside, Clara behind him. And one look at Gunnar's face told Aeliana everything. Something was wrong. Very wrong. But Gunnar didn't speak yet. He simply looked to Darren, then to the guild table. Is the agreement in place? He asked. Darren stepped back beside Aeliana. Just about. Gunnar nodded once. Good, because what Clara just told me changes everything. Aeliana's pulse quickened. Gunnar, what happened? He looked at her with a weight she hadn't seen since the Shadow War. Black Dawn is pulling out of every allied realm, he said. They've been ordered home. Silence crushed the room. Aeliana felt the world shift beneath her feet. Clara inhaled sharply behind Gunnar. Omega growled from the doorway. Darren's jaw tightened. Ashley swore quietly under her breath. And Hish, leader of the trade guild, whispered the only question that mattered. Home to where? Gunnar's voice was low, cold. We don't know. And that was infinitely worse. The room stayed silent after Gunnar's words, a still, heavy silence that felt like the breath before an avalanche. Hish's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. The ledger woman swallowed. Even the elven guards shifted imperceptibly. Aeliana stepped forward, her voice calm and steady but carrying weight. We're telling you this because transparency builds trust, and trust is the only way Mirkdusk, or any realm, survives what comes next. Hish nodded slowly. You honor us with the truth, Ambassador. But now we must understand what it means. Gunnar moved to stand beside her. Clara stayed near the door, Omega seated protectively at her heel. Darren stood just behind Aeliana's right shoulder, no longer observing, but ready to step in if needed. Ashley crossed her arms and leaned against the far wall, watching the guild like she expected someone to faint or pick a fight. Aeliana continued. Being part of the Alliance is not servitude. It is not surrender. It is commitment, shared strength. It means each realm stands for the others if danger comes. Hish exchanged a glance with his lieutenants. Stand. How? He asked. We have miners, traders, healers, but no centralized defense force. Draven kept us intentionally fractured. And now, Gunnar said, you build something better. He reached into his gear bag, pulled out a small crystal projector, and tapped its surface. A hollow layout flickered into the air. A diagram of squad formations, resource distribution, and defensive infrastructure. This is what the Alliance looks like, Gunnar said. Real support, real protection, and real expectations. The human lieutenant frowned. Expectations? We don't hand you weapons and walk away, Gunnar said. If you want to defend Mirkdusk, we help build the force you need, trained, equipped, and loyal to all of Mirkdusk. Not a guild, not a clan, not a warlord. Clara stepped forward. That part is essential. Loyalty must be to the realm as a whole. Anything less, and you end up with 5 factions, armed to the teeth and ready to shoot each other. The ledger keeper nodded reluctantly. And equipment? We have little left. Gunnar crossed his arms. Then we start with what your enemy left behind. A shiver moved through the room. Ashley whistled softly. He means the Black Dawn's stashes we keep tripping over. Hish blinked. You would give those to us? To our people? Not all of it, Gunnar said firmly. Black Dawn stockpiled things no civilian should touch. Some of it's cursed. Some of it explodes if you look at it wrong. Aeliana added, but standard armor, rifles, logistics gear, rations, comm units. Yes, those were stolen from your people. They should be returned, the ledger woman whispered. Draven never allowed anyone but his own forces to carry arms. And that's why he ruled you, Gunnar said. We're not repeating that mistake. Aeliana stepped closer to the table, adjusting her tone into something warm, diplomatic, and empowering. Mirkdusk will have its own quick reaction force, a modern high-tech defensive unit trained jointly by the 5077th and the Elven Guards, with oversight from your guild. Darren finally stepped in, with permission from Aeliana's steady glance. And let's be honest, he said. Your people deserve a fighting chance. You've been rebuilding walls with your bare hands. It's time you got proper tools. Hish exhaled, deeply moved. Our people. Armed, trained, trusted. Aeliana nodded. Yes. And vetted, Clara added. Thoroughly. Your recruits must be proven loyal to all of Mirkdusk. Not one gang, not one guild. All of it. Hish swallowed. That may be difficult. Darren smiled a little. If it were easy, someone would have done it before. A faint ripple of humour softened the guild's tension. Aeliana let the room settle before speaking again. And if Mirkdusk joins the Alliance formally, you'll have aid in rebuilding, access to inter-realm trade, medical support, ley line stabilization expertise, protection from outside threats. Protection from Black Dawn? The ledger woman asked. The room tensed again. Gunnar's voice was grim. Protection from whatever they become next. Silence. Sharp. Cutting. Hish looked at each of his lieutenants, then at Aeliana, then at Gunnar. Ambassador. Alpha. If we accept this, Mirkdusk will not be a pawn. No, Aeliana said. Then Mirkdusk accepts, Hish replied quietly. We will join the Alliance. The chamber felt larger for a moment, as though something heavy had finally lifted. Aeliana bowed her head. Thank you, Hish. Today marks a new chapter for your realm. Finally, Hish whispered, What? What does this mean for us? Aeliana breathed in slowly, a diplomat's centering breath, then lifted her chin and stepped forward. It means, she said softly but firmly, that this discussion must be tabled immediately. All eyes snapped toward her. She continued with quiet authority. This is no longer a Mirkdusk issue. It is an Alliance issue. A threat of this scale cannot be confronted realm by realm. We must address it together. The tension in the room eased. Not much, but enough that the walls seemed to exhale. One of the lieutenants shook his head. But, Ambassador, if Black Dawn is gathering, Aeliana raised a hand. Which is exactly why this cannot be solved here. Not today, not in this room. Her voice warmed, each word steady and measured. I will call for an inter-realm summit the moment we return to the Den. Every realm with an anchor to the Alliance, Alfheim, Earth, Atherin, Concordia, and Mirkdusk, will meet. We will share intel. We will coordinate response. And we will face this threat united. The guild didn't relax, but they steadied. They felt the ground beneath them again. Gunnar stepped up beside her. We're not keeping this quiet, he said. No secrets, no surprises. Every realm gets the same intel at the same time. Aeliana gave a small nod. Transparency protects us, and trust builds alliances. Darren, who had been listening carefully, took a half step forward. Calm, steady, easy in his own skin. You're not alone in this, he said. The Alliance doesn't drop storms on one realm. We take the lightning together. The ledger woman looked at him, eyes softening. And this summit, it will happen soon. Immediately, Aeliana said, as soon as this day's duties are done. Hish bowed his head, relief pulling at the hard lines of his face. Then Mirkdusk will attend, he said. We thank you for not burdening us with this alone. Aeliana bowed back. Unity is the only path forward. Ashley pushed off the wall, arms still crossed but expression less sharp. Good, because I'm not fighting a consolidated Black Dawn with a half-finished perimeter and 2 engineers with hammers. Darren snorted. Pretty sure your engineers would win. Yeah, Ashley muttered, but it'd be embarrassing. A faint ripple of ease passed through the room. The worst of the fear had been named, acknowledged, and redirected, not ignored, not dismissed. That was diplomacy. Aeliana let the moment settle before turning to Hish. For now, she said, let's focus on what we can do today. Hish nodded. The repatriation. Aeliana offered her hand across the table. Then let us begin that chapter. Hish placed his hand in hers, firm, resolved. It is time, he said. Transition to the ceremony. A messenger appeared in the doorway, breathless. Ambassador Commander, the first wave of prisoners is assembled. They await your word to begin. Aeliana released Hish's hand. Gunnar stepped forward, Alpha rising silently at his side. Aeliana adjusted her robes, lifted the Staff of Realms, and exhaled once, the calm before stepping into something historic. Let's go, she said. The doors opened. Light spilled into the chamber. Behind her, Gunnar and Alpha walked in steady rhythm. Ahead of them waited the first public act of unity Mirkdusk had seen in a generation. And as Aeliana crossed the threshold toward the ceremony hall, she felt the weight of the realms at her back, and the future of the Alliance in front of her. Done.